All right, in this video, we're going to go over quadratic systems part 1. And the LEQ for this is how do I solve and graph systems of linear and quadratic equations? All right, there's no new vocab for this, so let's get right into it. Solving a linear quadratic system by graphing. So, which numbers are y values of the solutions of the system of equations? Now, keep in mind here, this one is asking what are the y values of the solutions. So we're not looking for x, we're looking for y. Now, when you graph a system like this, right, it's real easy to figure out your solutions because when you have a linear equation like this going through a quadratic, your solutions are simply where the line and the quadratic cross. So that's all you're looking for. You just look for where they cross, and those are your solutions. So it wants to know what are the y values to these solutions? Well, after we graph them, the blue graph is our quadratic, the red graph is our linear or our line, and they cross at 0, 6, and 4, 10. It says what are the y values? 6 and 10. So the answer is D, 6 and 10. So to solve a system by graphing, the first thing you do is you graph both equations. You can either do it by hand or on your graphing calculator. Either way is fine. And then after you graph it, you simply look to see where the line and the parabola intersect. Those are your solutions. Now, it's possible that it might only intersect one time. Like it could come across here. Well, let me try that again. It could come across and just touch the quadratic like this. So there would only be one solution to this because it only touches in a single point. But that would still be the solution. You'd still figure out where it touches, right? And that's all you do. Now, you can check to make sure that these solutions are right by finding your equations and then plugging in your point and make sure that both sides equal the same thing. So for the first one, let's put in 0, 6. So we're going to have 6 equals negative 0 squared plus 5 times 0 plus 6. Well, that's gone and that's gone, so 6 equals 6. Check. So we know this is a solution to the first equation. Let's make sure it's a solution to the second equation. 6 equals 6. Check. That's a solution to the second one. Now you do the same thing with the 4 and 10, and you just check them just to make sure they work. All right. Not only does doing this verify that these are solutions, it also helps you verify that you graphed them correctly. All right. So that's really all there is to solving by graphing. All right. What about solving using substitution? Okay. Solving using substitution. Now, the easiest thing here is this. You see how these are both solved for y? All right. They're both solved for y. So that means we know what y equals. Here, y equals negative x squared minus x plus 6. Y also equals x plus 3. So doing substitution is real easy because we know y equals this. We have a y up here. Just take the x plus 3 and put it in place of the y. So we're going to have x plus 3 equals negative x squared minus x plus 6. Now, simply solve it for 0. So I'm going to add the x squared, add the x, and subtract the 6. So add the x squared, add the x, and subtract the 6. So there's no x squareds on this side, so that's just x squared. X plus x is plus 2x. And then 3 minus 6 is negative 3 equals 0. Now you just simply factor like we've been doing. So we know this has to be x and x. Since this is negative, we know we have one of each. Since this is positive, we know our larger factor is negative. The only factors of 3 are 3 and 1. So we know the 3 has to be positive and the 1 has to be negative. All right, I think I said that wrong. Since this is positive, our larger factor has to be positive. All right, so this factors down into x minus 1 and x plus 3, which then, of course, you set each one of these, oops, You set each one of these equal to 0, and then of course you solve for x. So you could add the 1, add 1, so x equals 1, subtract 3, so x equals -3. So your two solutions are x equals 1 and x equals -3. Now, to get the y portions of those solutions, what we have to do is plug them up into here. What I would do is I'd pick the simpler equation. So I'm going to pick the y equals x plus 3 because let's get the actual point, not just the x value. These are the x values that solve it, but let's get the actual 2 points that solve it. For that, you just simply plug in the 1. So we have y equals 1 plus 3. So y equals 4. So our first solution point is going to be 1 comma 4 because we found that x equals 1 is the solution. We plugged in the 1 and found its corresponding y value, which is 4. Now let's plug in the -3. So you have y equals -3 plus 3, which is y equals 0. So our second solution point, our x value is -3 and our y value is 0. So, oops. So that is your answer, 1 comma 4 and -3 comma 0. Those are the two solutions that solve this system. All right. These are the two that solve this system. How did we do that again? Well, we use substitution. We know that y equals this. We know that y equals x plus 3 as well. So since we know y is x plus 3, just simply take the x plus 3, substitute it in here for y. That's what we did here. Now, we wanted to solve for 0, so we moved everything from this side over here. You could have moved everything from this side to this side if you'd wanted to. You would have been left with a negative x squared, which you would have then needed to multiply everything by -1. But it still would have worked and would have still came out to get the same answer. So we moved everything over. We have x squared plus 2x minus 3 equals 0. We then factored that, set each factor equal to 0, and we found the x coordinates of our solution points. Then we took our simpler equation, because it doesn't matter which one you pick, they're both going to give you the same number at these 2 points. So pick the simpler one, y equals x plus 3, you plug in the first x value, which is 1, 1 plus 3 is 4, plug in the second, which is -3, -3 plus 3 is 0. And then those are your two solution points. All right, I'm going to let you try one now. What is the solution of the system? Y equals -x squared minus 3x plus 10, and y equals x plus 5. Go ahead and pause the video and work these out. All right, so here we go. Again, we're going to let's use substitution. So we know that y equals x plus 5. So let's plug the x plus 5 in for y. So x plus 5 equals -x squared minus 3x plus 10. Let's move all of this over to here. So we're going to add the x squared, add the 3x, and subtract the 10. So add the x squared, add the 3x, and subtract the 10. So we have no other x squared to add to, so it's just x squared. This becomes a plus 4x, and this becomes a minus 5 equals 0. So now you simply factor. We know this has to be x and x. This is negative, so we know we have one of each. This is positive. We know our larger factor has to be positive. The only factors of 5 are 5 and 1. And again, we know the 5 has to be positive because 5 is the larger factor. So there's our two factors. Set each one to equal to 0. Solve for x. So x equals 1. And then x plus 5 equals 0. Minus 5, minus 5. So x equals -5. So now we have the x values of our solution points. Let's plug them into the simpler equation, which is by far y equals x plus 5. Let's plug them in and see what we get. So plug in the 1, we get 1 plus 5. So y equals 6. So our first solution point is 1 comma 6. And let's do our second one. Y equals -5 plus 5. So y equals 0. So our second solution point is -5 comma 0. All right. So that's all there is to solving systems of linear in quadratic equations, by substitution, you just simply set them equal to each other. Like we did here, since they're both equal to y, we just set them equal to each other and solve for the x values, which is what we did over here. Once you find the x values, pick the simpler of the two equations, plug in your two x values, and find your two corresponding y's. So these are our two solution points. Okay, so that's really all there is to solving quadratic systems by both graphing and by um, substitution. So make sure you understand the concepts in this video. Feel free to watch as many times as you need to, and come to class tomorrow ready to work some problems. See you tomorrow.